A button is probably one of the most boring things you can add to a website. It's a rectangle. It has text. You click it, something happens. Very impressive, humanity has peaked. But recently I had a situation that made me think about something that sounds very small, but is actually a huge part of UI and UX. When you hover over a button, what are you expecting to happen? Should the cursor change? Should the button animate? Should the color change? Should it move? And when you click it, what should happen then? Should it press down? Should it show a loading state? Should it become disabled? Should it confirm that your action actually worked? Because here's the thing, users don't usually think about these details consciously. Nobody opens a website and says, yes, I am now expecting an overstate with appropriate visual affordance. Normal people don't talk like that. What does visual affordance even mean? But they do feel it when something is wrong. A good interface is not just about what is visible, it's also about what happens between actions. Before the click, during the click, after the click. That's where UI and UX start to overlap. UI is the button changing color. UX is the user understanding that the system is working and they don't need to click 5 more times like they're trying to summon a demon. UI is the disabled state. UX is the user understanding why they can continue yet. So today we're going to look at the invisible expectations behind something as simple as a button. And later we're going to put these ideas into practice. Let's start with the default state. This is the button before the user does anything. At this stage, the button has one job. It needs to look clickable. That sounds obvious, but it's very easy to mess up. If a button looks too much like plain text, people might not know it's clickable. If it looks too much like a decorative label, people might ignore it. If everything on the page has the same visual weight, the user doesn't know where to focus. So a button needs to communicate action, something like save, continue, buy now, create account, start project. The text should be clear, the styles should suggest interactivity, and the button should stand out enough that users understand it has a purpose. Not every button needs to scream for attention, but the important action should be obvious. Because before the user clicks, they are already asking a question. What can I do here? The UI should answer that. Now we move the cursor over the button. This is where overstates come in. On desktop, over is basically the interface saying, yes, this thing is interactive. That can be done in many ways. The cursor can change, the color can shift, the shadow can become stronger, the border can change. The button can move slightly. The text can underline. But the important word is slightly. Over feedback should confirm the interaction, not turn the website into a boss fight, because the user is not trying to watch a cinematic universe unfold. They're just checking if this thing can be clicked. The overstate answers another question. Am I pointing at the right thing? And if the answer is yes, the UI should make that obvious. But calm, confident, not desperate for attention. Then comes the click. This is the big moment. You are about to do the thing. And when you do the thing, you expect the thing to, do something. This is where a lot of interfaces feel weird because sometimes you click something and nothing seems to happen. This breaks me. You are in the build-up. It's the big moment. The beer is cold, pizza on the oven, and boom! No cheese. Sorry, back to the subject. Maybe the request is loading. Maybe the action worked. Maybe the button is broken. Maybe the website is thinking about its life choices. The user doesn't know. And when users don't know, they start doing dangerous things. They click again. They refresh. They go back. They abandon the page. They insult your entire engineering team in silence. So when a user clicks, the interface should react immediately, even if the real action takes time. A button can briefly look pressed, it can change color, it can show a loading spinner, it can change from save to saving and then saved. That tiny feedback loop is extremely important because the user is asking, did my action register? The UI should answer, yes, something is happening. Buttons also have other states: disabled, loading, success, error, and each one has a job. A disabled button tells the user, you can't do this yet, but that alone might not be enough. If the button is disabled and the user has no idea why, that becomes frustrating. A better interface gives context. Maybe it says, enter your email to continue, or choose a file before uploading, or complete all required fields. Now the user knows what to fix. Loading states are similar. A loading state tells the user the system is working. Success tells the user it worked. Error tells the user something failed and here's what you can do next. So when we design a button, we're not just designing one rectangle. We're designing a tiny conversation between the user and the system. The user asks, can I click this? The UI answers. The user asks, did it work? The UI answers. The user asks, what do I do now? The UI answers. That is good interaction design. So next time your boss asks for a button timeline, you can confidently say, 2 weeks, boss. And then get fired because Claude does it in a minute. Sad times. So now that we understand the invisible expectations behind a simple button, let's put that into practice. Here we have a normal website, the button is clear, the layout is readable, everything feels calm, so now let's hover over the button. Okay, that was slightly intense, but fine. Maybe it's just a little enthusiastic. But maybe the click is normal. Let's click. Okay, that is not the correct website. Right, so that was obviously terrible, but it helps show the point. The problem is not that the website gave feedback. Feedback is good. The problem is that the feedback was completely disproportionate to the action. The user hovered over a button, and the website reacted like it had just discovered fire. That breaks trust, because now the user is no longer thinking, I know what this button does. They're thinking, what is this interface going to do to me? Do I have a virus on my computer? And that's not where you want the user's brain to be. I mean, maybe you do, I'm not going to judge, but good UI should support the action. Bad UI becomes the action. That's the difference. For developers and designers, this is why component states matter so much. A button is not just, here's the button. A real button component usually needs to handle default, over, focus, active, disabled, loading, success, error. And focus is especially important because not everyone uses a mouse. Keyboard users need to know where they are on the page. So if your overstate is beautiful but your focus state is invisible, the interface is still incomplete. Accessibility is also part of expectation. Some users expect to navigate with tab. Some users expect screen readers to understand the button. Some users expect disabled actions to be explained. Good UI is not just visual polish. It's behavior, it's clarity, it's trust. So to summarize, a good button does more than sit on the page. It communicates. The default state says, you can do this. The hover state says, yes, this is interactive. The active state says, yes, your click was registered. The loading state says, something is happening, please wait. The success or error state says, here's what happened next. And when those states are missing, the UI can feel broken, even if the code technically works. But when those states are too extreme, the interface becomes confusing, distracting, and sometimes deeply cursed. So the goal is not to add more feedback. The goal is to add the right feedback. Because the funniest thing about bad UI is that it often looks fine in a screenshot, but it breaks when you touch it. So next time you're building a button, a form, a menu, or any small interaction, don't just ask, does this work? Ask, does the user know it works? Does the user know what is happening? Does the user know what to do next? That's where UI becomes UX, and that's where a simple button becomes a much bigger design lesson. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like, subscribe for more programming and design videos, and maybe take a look at one of your own projects and ask, is this interface helping the user or is it secretly waiting to explode? I'll see you in the next dimension.